Welcome on in, guys. Tobin here with you, and thanks for checking out the channel. Hope you're doing great out there, and if you guys could subscribe, that'd be great. Hit that like button. You guys know the deal. Comment, and that does all good things for the channel. So appreciate you guys. Tonight, Miami Heat are getting set for the Toronto Raptors. You guys have to watch this before 6:15 Eastern time. You guys could tune in on the Odyssey app. I'll be doing pregame and postgame coverage for the Miami Heat broadcast. Very much looking forward to that. Working with Tommy Tig and Jax tonight as the Heat are getting set for the Toronto Raptors. Start this thing with a 3-game road trip. But it was announced yesterday that TNT is going to harbor in some Heat drama as they have picked up the national broadcast for Heat and Warriors on March 25th as Jimmy Butler will return to the Kaseya Center. And obviously, it'll be interesting to see what kind of a night that is. Will the Miami Heat fan boo Jimmy Butler? Will they cheer Jimmy Butler? I do think a lot of that can be dictated by the Miami Heat, which is kind of interesting to know what their next move is going to be with this. And maybe things will change based on how the season goes. If the Heat are riding high, if they wanted a hostile crowd, both teams who are vying for playoff spots, who knows? Other things can come out. There could be more dirt swirling that happens between both parties. If I had to guess from now, I still think the Miami Heat are going to take the high road when it comes to this. And to be fair, in the most recent Jimmy Butler public sentiments when he was in Dubai doing a radio interview, he took, for the most part, a very high road stance when it came to this. In his comments to ESPN, he said that he is not going to come out and tell his side of the story, maybe to Shaq, as a little wink nod to the last time that there was this big of a superstar beef. Shaq was probably the most prominent guy who did back Jimmy Butler in all of this, even with his reconciliations with the Heat organization, which is an interesting thing. You know, there's been so much talk about what the future holds for retirement ceremonies of Jimmy Butler's number and all that type of stuff. And as of right now, everything is very, very fresh. It's a wound that hasn't gotten close to healing yet. But there are going to have to be a time where there is optics for things. And I do think that for the most part, the Heat like to take the high road on things like this. And I would imagine that, yeah, there is going to be some kind of a montage, some type of Jimmy Butler tribute that goes down. That's 90 seconds to a couple of minutes during the first time out. And that'll be that. And I think Mike Biamonte gives the home welcome to Jimmy Butler. And then the Miami Heat kind of hold their head high and move on to the next thing, and we'll see what happens. The fans might boo him once the game starts and just touching the basketball out of just friendly sports banter. But I don't think there's going to be this, vitriol that spits. Honestly, there really never was that while this was all going on and Jimmy Butler was still suiting up for the Miami Heat. So I have a harder time believing that a Heat team that's been struggling now, but let's just say even if they get things right, I got a hard time believing that building is going to turn bad and break bad on Jimmy Butler. I just have a hard time believing it. Now, there could still be some harsh feelings from the Miami Heat. Certainly, I can't imagine that some of the things that have leaked, particularly about those meetings with Jimmy Butler and calling Pat Riley unhinged and the Heat responding and saying, "You're unhinged. No, you're unhinged. You are so unhinged." That definitely could lead Pat Riley to the grand petty of them all and just say, "Nah, sorry." You did hear Tyler Hero come out this week and got some reaction about Andrew Wiggins getting number 22 and saying that the door was opened up. So maybe the door opens up to the Heat not doing it. But the thing I would say with it is, if you don't, it's like you never can do it again, right? Like it can't be this and then some other time where Jimmy Butler returns and then you do it. That's just weird. So from my standpoint, I just feel like the Heat, they like to uphold. They're almost like they're like a rich family sometimes, where they like to, even if there's, Aunt Betty has a drinking problem, they like to uphold appearances. And so I don't feel like the Heat are going to let it show publicly that they have animosity towards Jimmy Butler, even if they do. They didn't with LeBron James. And even if LeBron James's exit was more cordial, I think on the surprise factor, because he was a guy at the peak of his powers and he got Riley really for the first time. Usually Riley is the one who gets the jump on guys leaving. That really was a gut punch to Riley. And then the idea that they were sneaking around and having meetings with Dan Gilbert and all that stuff, making moves in the shadows, nuking Pat Riley's free agent moves, that really, really like bothered Pat Riley to the point where it hurt his relationship with Dwayne Wade. And it took a while for that to reconcile. The Jimmy thing has been nasty and it's been bitter, but it spilt out a lot of stuff that was there. But also the Heat made it pretty clear they didn't want Jimmy Butler back. They had to think at some point, even in the most ideal scenario, that he was going to leave at the end of this season. So if you knew you wanted the time to come to an end, why not celebrate the good moments that you did have? They did put out the tweet and all that type of stuff. It was not like this vast montage or anything like that, but I'm under the impression that I would just guess that I think they're going to do it, but they could just go F it. I'm not sure. The other things that we got to talk about here today, Nikola Jović for this upcoming Toronto game is ill. So this illness, this plague that has taken over the Heat locker room still lingers. I don't know what the hell's going on here. And it seems like it's gotten everybody. I mean, it's gotten Tyler, Jaime, Terry, Wiggins. I think Duncan got a little bit of the BGs as well. And now Nico. So that's, I think, 6 by my count of the guys who have dealt with this. There have been other people around the locker room who have dealt with it as well. I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm surprised that this is still a thing after the All-Star break. I would have thought they would have hazmat suited that locker room and that facility just to get it all out there, get all the poison out there. But that is it still is there, dude. So we got to keep an eye on that for sure. The other thing we got to keep an eye on is Bam Adebayo, who is maybe going to be back in the Defensive Player of the Year race. The unfortunate news, Victor Wembanyama suffered a blood clot in his shoulder. And I know every Heat fan's immediate mind went to Chris Bosh. Impossible that it's not. Spo just described it as horrible news. It was all fresh. And that's, you're hopeful that it's going to be nothing, right? Like it's they're going to miss it for the rest of the year and that his career goes on just fine. Brandon Ingram dealt with something like this and he was cool. But the doom side of it is, Chris Bosh dealt with it and then came back and then it recurred. And the thing when it recurred was the first time it happened, it was super scary because it got to his lungs and he was in the hospital and it was the real deal. Like it was a scary thing for Chris Bosh. And then the next time it happened, he said that he felt fine. This caused like a whole rift with the organization and the Bosches, and Bosh and his family wearing like free Bosh shirts and thinking that he felt fine to play, and that they had one doctor and nobody was clearing it. And it was just a whole thing back and forth to the point where like I think Bosh's family thought that there was animosity, that the Heat were just trying to get Bosh off the books. And the real thing of it was like, hey, you just could not risk, and no other team could not risk Bosh having to be on blood thinners and something of contact happening on a court. So the hope is this is just a one and doneer for Victor Wembanyama and that he is fine. This is in the arm. I think Bosh's was in the legs, moving to the lungs at first and then was back in the legs. So I don't know. I'm not a doctor. But it's tough not to it's tough not to have that sports PTSD thinking about that whole scenario, how scary it was for Chris. And it was great to see. It was really like just a beloved Heat player and one that you saw this year. It's just one of the big what ifs of all time, just because the Heat, going back to that LeBron thing, like Chris Bosh gets the blood clots hours after Goran Dragic gets traded to the Miami Heat, and it was the 10-year anniversary of this. What was that team? Him, Goran, D-Wade, Dang, CB, Whiteside. Like, what could that team have done? And we got a little stint of it the next year, and it didn't like get off to the flying start, but it was a year where D-Wade was younger, still at the peak of his powers. Goran, getting another team. Who knows? It just remains one of those mysteries, and you're hopeful that Wemby, who's obviously been a sensation in the league, this is a quick fix and he's okay. He's now not eligible to get awards. So it is, I think every Heat fan was curious, what does this mean for Bam Adebayo's chances of getting in the Defensive Player of the Year race? And Bam, who has really come around offensively, this has now been a case of, okay, does he have a chance in this whole thing? Now, I've been looking on the Hard Rock app, my app of choice, to check the odds and see where things are. But I am curious to see, but I haven't seen DPOY come up here, but I was sent odds from Bet Online, and they have Jaren Jackson Jr. now as the favorite to win his second DPOY. Evan Mobley is then next at 6-5, so that's a plus 120. Lugens Dort is the Dortcher Chamber 12-1. Dyson Daniels 14-1. SGA 18-1. Zubac 25-1. Amen Thompson 28-1. Jalen Williams. So they have 3 OKC Thunder players in the top of the odds. Rudy Gobert at 33-1 to win his gazillionth DPOY. And then finally, the last guy listed there, Bam Adebayo at 75-1. I might throw something on it just because it could be a crazy streak, but as you notice on those stats, and typically is with awards, unless there's somebody overwhelming, like Victor Wembanyama was, it typically goes to somebody who's atop the standings, and the Heat are not there right now. So I don't love Bam's chances of winning Defensive Player of the Year. I think we just got to keep an eye on Kenny now, sneak on to an all-defensive team. But I don't love his chances of that just because of where the Heat are currently in the Eastern Conference with all of this. But certainly an interesting thing. And, to wrap this thing up on kind of a mixed bag of Heat news here, Tim Hardaway Sr., Tim Hardaway, number 10 in the Raptors, is now beefing with Tyrese Haliburton. He was on Gilbert Arenas' podcast, which, Gilbert Arenas is like, he leads the league in just saying stuff. I think in like all the post-player podcasts, I feel like Gilbert Arenas just leads the league in just throwing stuff against the wall. But Tim Hardaway is now beefing because he basically said that if he could come back and play, the person that he'd like to destroy on the court would be Tyrese Haliburton. And he said, if I go back and suit up, I want to fuck up Tyrese Haliburton. He talks so much shit. I just want to go back and bust his motherfucking ass. He think he all that. And then Tyrese Haliburton says, tell the world the real reason you feel this way, Tim. So now I'm like on edge. I can't wait to see what the next chapter in this whole ordeal is as to why Tyrese Haliburton is absolutely beefing with a Heat legend. There must be more. I mean, there must be more details that we must find out. But I need to know. I need to know why Tyrese Haliburton and Tim Hardaway are now the latest beef in the NBA. So we'll keep an eye on that